Hey y'all, it's Diane with Shawcraft One and my old barn door, and I'm just working on some little golden books, trying to get ready for my Black Friday sale. So I just thought I'd come on and turn the camera on and say hi, and let you see the process of how I get my golden books ready. So basically, I'm just going to show you the process of how I take the book apart and how I do the spine. So first of all, I just kind of look at my spine to see if I can see where the staples are, and if you can't see them, you can kind of feel them. So I just take my handy dandy tool, it's a butter knife, and I just kind of open the cover, and I'll slide my knife in sort of at the same spot where I can see the staple, and I'm just going to jiggle it sideways just to kind of loosen that staple a little bit. I'm going in from the front cover, so I'm going to jiggle that staple loose. Then I'm going to come down here to the bottom one and jiggle that loose. So I just basically turn my knife from side to side just to kind of loosen up the staple from the front side. Then I'm going to flip it over, open the back cover, find my staple, and go in and jiggle it from side to side until I can get that staple fairly loose. And you can kind of tell when it starts sticking up, it'll poke through the little gold paper. And then I'm going to come up to this one, and I'm just going to turn it from side to side, trying to keep my spine as intact as possible. Now once I get it fairly loose and get the staples to where they're sticking up somewhat, then I can just take my hand and I push down here and I pull up against the spine, doing my best not to rip the spine. And then I'll go down to the bottom and do the same thing. And now I have it separated. So then I'll take some pliers and I just straighten out my staples. Whoops. So that they're straight enough for me to pull the pages off. So then I'm going to take my pages and I'm just going to slide them right out of the staples. And then you have your two signatures. So then I take my pliers and I'm just going to grab a hold of that staple and I'm going to push it down through the outside of the journal until I can grab a hold of it. And then I'll just pull my little staple out. And then I do the same thing with this staple. I'm just going to push it. And then pull my staple out. And you're going to get it, you know, it'll tear a little bit, but that's okay, because when you glue it to the fabric, you can glue that back down. So then once I have it to this point, I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm just going to slice right down the edge of the spine on both sides so that I get just this piece. I'm going to turn this one over and I'm going to slide down the spine just like that and get that little piece off so that it's not in the way. That piece can go in the garbage. Now I have my front and back piece of my book. Okay, so once I get to this point, then I always have some cardboard pieces. This is from a cereal box. And so I'm going to line this up with my book here and just make sure that I can get my spine cut the same length as my book. And I usually use two pieces just to make sure it's a good thick spine, that it's going to be sturdy and it will hold well. For when I get ready to sew it together. Okay, so then I'm going to take both pieces of my spine and just trim off the excess. Now I have a separate blade that I use for cardboard, and then a separate one that I use for paper, because once you start using a blade for cardboard, it's going to dull it pretty quickly, and it will actually rip your papers if you try to use it on your papers. So now I have my 2 pieces for my spine. I'm going to bring over my little silicone mat here. This was Cricket's. And I'm going to open up my glue. This is just Aleene's Tacky Glue. This is the glue that Sarah sent me in this jar. And I have used it like crazy. So I'm just going to dip in and get some glue. And I usually like to put like the colored sides together so that you don't see anything through fabric. So you just have the card color or the brown color, cardboard color, whatever color on the outsides. So I'm just going to glue, I'm just going to paint my glue on here real quick. And I'm going to put these 2 pieces together. Just like that. Making sure that they line up good. And then I'm going to sit that to the side to let it dry and get rid of my mat. Now I have a piece of fabric here. Let me just get my lid back on my glue so it don't dry out. So I'm just going to unfold my fabric, and what I usually do is I will fold it in half. We'll always make sure that I have, you know, enough to cover the front and the back, and I'll show you what I mean. You'll understand it a little better once I do the measurements. Or I actually don't measure, I just eyeball, because I eyeball everything. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to trim off some of this because I want the tattered edges at the side. Whoops. And that did not do very well, so we're going to go again. So I'm just going to tear it all the way down. And I keep these because I use them in snippets, or not snippets, clusters. And sometimes if they're big enough, you can use them for tag toppers. So I just frame my edges a little bit. And then I'm going to go to this side. Make sure I'm good and even here. So I'm just going to measure out. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. I might can turn the camera just a little bit so you can see. Sorry if I made you dizzy. So I'm just going to line it up on the side over here. And then I'm going to come over and cut it to about 4.5 inches. And I'm just going to cut it just a little bit, and then I'm going to rip it. And again, see, those will be cute little tag toppers, or you can use them on paper clips, things like that. So that's a good sized little strip. Okay, so now I'm just going to pull my strings off of this one. And then I can tell that this end is a little wonky, so I want to start with this end. And I'm just going to take my books, and I'm going to line it up here. And then I'm going to fold it over. Make sure it's lined up down at the bottom. This is how I measure them. I'm not a ruler girl, or, you know, all that good stuff. So then I'm just going to trim off right there and rip it. Now that will make a cute little pocket once you trim it up a little bit. Okay. So now that I have the size of my fabric that I need for the spine, I'm going to pull those frayed threads off, straighten it out, and then I like to line it up on my mat. Let me get you straightened back out again so that hopefully you can see the edge of the mat. So I'll just line it up down here on my mat so that I know I'm going to line it up with this line here. This just kind of helps me to get the book, you know, on there, on the cover straight. Okay, so then I'm going to take my front cover and I'm going to put some glue on it. And again, I just kind of eyeball this. It's not a perfect art. So I'm just going to get some glue here. And I'm going to just put the glue on my spine. And see what I mean when the pieces that come apart when you pull your staples out, they'll just glue right down. Okay. So I'm just going to get my glue spread out there, and then I am going to take my book, and I'm going to go in about 1.25 inches. I'm going to line it up at the bottom, and I'm going to line my book edge up with my line here on my mat. And then I'm just going to press down on that. And then I'm going to pull my spine over, and I'm going to put some glue on it. You don't want it real thick because it will take it forever to dry. So I just do as thin a layer as possible on my spine and my book covers. And then I set them aside and let them dry. So once I've got the glue on here, I'm going to come in and I'm going to place this down just like 1 millimeter from the front cover, because I want it to have room to be able to bend. Okay, so I'm just going to press that down. I'm going to take my back cover, put some glue on it. Got a little bit too much glue there. And then I'm going to flip it over, line it up with the bottom, give it about 1 millimeter in between, and I'm going to line it up with this line here at the bottom. This is the line I'm talking about. I've got all 3 pieces lined up with this bottom line so that I know that they're in there straight. Okay, so once I get that on, I'm going to take my glue, and I'm going to go ahead and put glue on the inside. And I like to get a little bit of glue at a time so that I can spread it pretty thin, because again, if you get too much glue, it's going to be clumpy and it's going to take it forever to dry. And I have had them before to where I've done them and they never dried, so I had to just get rid of it. So you don't want to mess up your book. And I guess they would eventually dry, but I didn't want to take the chance, you know, to do a book like that and sell it and it not ever dry and it just be junky. I try to always make sure that my books are in really, really good condition and that they're going to stay together really well and be a good quality book. I'm not going to sell any junk. Okay, so I have my glue, a really thin layer of glue. Let me get my lid back on my glue. And then I'm just going to take, I have an old credit card. I'm just going to take this and fold it down. And just flatten my fabric on the spine. Just like that. And then kind of push it out to the side. Make sure it sticks down there real good. Just like that. And then I take my card and I'm just going to kind of go in between here, because I want the fabric to be pushed down in that little crease a little bit, because that's going to help it to be able to bend easier when you get ready to, once it dries and you get ready to close your book. So that is how I do my little golden book spines. And then once it's dry, I'll trim off the excess down here. I always leave myself a little bit of extra just to make sure I have enough fabric, because it's always better to have too much than not enough. So that's basically how I prepare my little golden book spines. And then I'll set this aside and let it dry for a while. And so that's it. So if you have any comments or questions, you can leave them in the box below. Make sure you like the video and hit subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys watching, and I hope y'all have a great day. Big hugs.